Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling those tricky little things in French, direct and indirect object pronouns.
Yeah, these are definitely important if you want to sound more natural and really understand how sentences work in French.
For sure. And especially for any of our listeners out there working towards that pronunciator certificate.
Right. Definitely going to want to know this stuff for the library module.
It's like they always say, got to know the rules before you can break them.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with just a simple breakdown, like what even is a direct object pronoun?
Well, simply put, it's a pronoun that receives the action of a verb, like in je vois le chat. Le chat is the direct object. He's the one being seen.
Gotcha. So the direct object pronoun would be like replacing le chat to avoid having to say it twice, right?
Exactly.
But then what makes an indirect object pronoun different?
Well, think of it like this. The indirect object pronoun tells you to whom or for whom the action is being done.
Like if you're giving a gift, the gift is the direct object, and the person getting the gift is the indirect object.
That's a great way to put it.
So in French, je donne le cadeau à Marie. The indirect object would be Marie, because she's who I'm giving the gift to.
That's right.
Okay, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are the actual pronouns we're talking about here?
All right, so for direct objects, we've got me, te, le, la, nous, vous, and les.
Okay, so nothing too crazy yet.
Not too bad yet, no. But, of course, it wouldn't be French if there weren't a few little quirks.
Uh-huh.
For example, in negative sentences.
Okay, yeah. How do those work?
Well, instead of coming after the verb, like in English, the pronoun actually goes before it.
Oh, really? So it's like totally flipped.
Yep, like je mange la pomme would become je ne la mange pas.
Whoa, okay, so the la goes before the mange.
Exactly.
I'm guessing that's probably something that trips a lot of people up, huh?
Oh, absolutely, especially when you're first starting out.
So is there like a historical reason why it's like that, or is it just one of those things?
Well, it actually is pretty interesting. It has to do with how the French language evolved and how negations became part of sentences. It's a whole thing.
Oh, wow. I bet that is really interesting.
Definitely.
Maybe something we can deep dive into another time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've got those negative sentences where the pronouns all flipped around.
Right.
But what else? Any other times these pronouns like to move around?
Well, things get a bit trickier with compound tenses, like the passé composé.
Oh, yeah. Those always throw me for a loop. What happens there?
Basically, if the pronoun comes before the auxiliary verb,
Okay.
then the past participle has to agree with it in gender and number.
Well, wait, hold on. Agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're conjugating the past participle based on the pronoun.
You got it.
Okay, I'm going to need an example for this one.
No problem. So like, j'ai vu la maison. La maison is feminine singular, right?
Right.
So if we replace that with the pronoun la, the past participle vu has to become vu to agree.
So the sentence becomes, je l'ai vu.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, definitely never realized that was a thing before.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those little details you got to keep in mind.
Especially for that pronunciator test. Those things get super specific.
For sure. They're not messing around.
Okay, so one thing I'm curious about, though, why does it only agree if the pronoun comes before the auxiliary?
Good question. Basically, it comes down to the pronoun's position. Like if it's before the auxiliary, it's almost like it's commanding the past participle to agree with it.
Oh, I like that. It's like it's got that extra power being up front.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so we've got those direct object pronouns down, but how about those indirect ones? Ready to tackle those behind-the-scenes heroes?
Let's do it. All right, so indirect objects, we've got me, te, lui, nous, vous, and leur.
Okay, so pretty similar to the direct object ones, but with a few different faces in the crowd.
Exactly. And just like before, they answer the question to whom or for whom the action's being done.
Gotcha. Like in je lui donne le livre,
Right.
lui would be our indirect object pronoun because it's referring to the person getting the book.
Right. And one thing to watch out for with these is leur,
Right.
specifically.
Oh, what's up with lure?
It's always just leur when it's an indirect object pronoun.
Okay.
You never add an S to it like you do when it's a possessive adjective.
Yeah. Good catch.
Gotta be careful with those little details.
For sure, those can really trip you up sometimes.
Absolutely.
So, okay, what happens if we have both a direct and an indirect object pronoun in the same sentence?
Ooh, good question. Well, there's actually a very specific order they have to go in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the indirect object pronoun usually comes first.
Yes.
So like, je le lui donne, meaning I give it to him. For lui comes before le.
Okay, I see. So it's always indirect then direct.
Usually, yeah. But of course, there's always a few exceptions.
Of of course.
Yeah.
What's the exception this time?
Well, actually, it has to do with Louis again.
Oh, Louis. What's he up
That.
to now?
If it comes right before la or le, it actually changes to say.
Whoa, hold on. Changes completely. Why?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but basically it's for pronunciation reasons.
Huh?
Like saying l'huile or l'huile is a bit clunky, so they just swap it out for se to make things smoother.
Oh, interesting. So it's like French grammar trying to save us from some awkward tongue twisters.
You could say that.
Okay, this is all making a lot more sense now.
Good.
What about those other indirect object pronouns, we and on? Those always seem a bit mysterious to me.
Yes, those two. They're a bit special, but super useful once you get the hang of them.
Okay, so break it down for me. What's ya all about?
Ya basically replaces a prepositional phrase that starts with a. Usually indicating a location, so like, je vais à la bibliothèque.
I'm going to the library.
Exactly. That becomes je vais, I'm going there.
Oh, so it's kind of like replacing there.
You got it.
Okay, and what about on then? What's its deal?
On is all about quantities. It replaces prepositional phrases starting with de.
So like, I have some books.
Yeah, like j'ai des livres would become j'en ai.
Okay, so it's kind of like saying of them, but in pronoun form.
Exactly.
Wow, okay. These two little pronouns really pack a punch.
They do. They can simplify so much.
Definitely seems like knowing these would really step up your French game.
For sure.
But I feel like we're just scratching the surface here, right? There's got to be even more to these pronouns.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's always more to explore with French grammar.
So what are some of the more advanced things that might trip people up?
Well, let's see. We could talk about infinitive constructions or verbs with prepositions or even how they work in commands.
Okay, yeah. Those all sound tricky. Let's do it. Bring on the challenge.
All right, so where were we? Oh, yeah, those advanced pronoun scenarios.
Yeah, like infinitive constructions, you mentioned those. I was confused with those.
Yeah, those can be tricky. So like with il faut or il veut,
Okay.
the pronoun actually goes before the infinitive.
So like instead of il faut donner le livre à Marie, it'd be il faut donner le livre.
Exactly.
Wow, so the pronoun is just sandwiched in there.
It is. It's all about position with these pronouns.
And what about verbs that have prepositions attached, like penser à or parler de?
Yes. Those actually act like indirect objects, even though there's a preposition.
So you'd use an indirect object pronoun even though it seems like it should be direct.
Exactly. The preposition is your clue there.
So je pense à mon ami becomes je pense à lui.
That's right.
Okay, that makes sense. And last but not least, what about commands?
Yes. With affirmative commands, the pronoun comes after the verb.
And they're connected by a hyphen, right?
You got it, like donne-le-moi for give it to me.
Okay, I think I'm finally starting to get all these pronoun things straight.
I hope so. It's definitely a lot to keep track of.
It is, but hey, if we can understand this, I'm pretty sure our listeners can too.
Aha! I'd say so.
But definitely, for anyone working on that pronunciator certificate, gotta practice this stuff.
Absolutely. That library module is going to be your best friend.
For sure. Gotta put in the time to really master it.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything.
Definitely feeling a lot more confident about these pronouns now.
That's what we like to hear.
But hey, even if you're not going for the certificate, understanding these, it's just going to make your French sound so much better.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about fluency.
So keep practicing, keep experimenting, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Exactly.
Until next time.